Airport security can go from quick and easy to slow and awkward in seconds, and a lot of the time, it is not because someone packed something obviously bad. It is because their carry-on is messy, their liquids are packed wrong, their electronics are buried, or their bag looks confusing on the scanner. In this video, we're going through 11 airport security mistakes that get bags pulled aside, including the simple carry-on mistakes that keep slowing travelers down, triggering extra checks, and turning a normal security line into a stressful delay. So before your next trip, let's look at the airport security mistakes that can get your bag flagged and make sure yours is not one of them. Number 1. Packing your carry-on too densely. This is one of the biggest reasons bags get pulled aside at airport security, because when a carry-on is packed too tightly, it becomes much harder for the scanner to clearly show what is actually inside. And that is where travelers get caught out. They think they are being efficient by squeezing everything in neatly, but at security, packed too neatly can sometimes look like packed too messily. The problem is not always what is in the bag. It is how it appears once it goes through the machine. When items are crammed together, stacked on top of each other, and jammed into every bit of space, the bag can start looking like one big cluttered block instead of separate, easy-to-read objects. And once that happens, security may not be able to quickly tell what they are looking at, which is exactly when your bag is more likely to get stopped. This catches a lot of people because they assume the only reason a bag gets pulled is if they packed something banned or dangerous. But quite often, it is just a bag that is too full, too layered, or too chaotic on the inside. A packed carry-on might feel organized to you because you know where everything is, but the scanner does not see your logic. It just sees a dense pile of overlapping shapes. And that is why this mistake is so frustrating. You did not mean to do anything wrong. You were just trying to fit more in. Maybe you did not want to check a bag. Maybe you were trying to save space. Maybe you were proud of getting everything into one carry-on. But the result can still be the same. Your bag gets flagged, pulled aside, opened up, and now you are standing there while someone goes through the very bag you thought you packed so cleverly. Smart travelers understand that airport security is not just about packing light. It is about packing clearly. That means giving items some space, avoiding that overstuffed look, and not turning your carry-on into a tightly packed mystery box. Because the easier your bag is to read on the scanner, the better chance it has of getting through without drama. At airport security, a carry-on that is too dense can create just as much trouble as a carry-on with the wrong item in it. Number 2. Hiding liquids in random pockets. This is one of the easiest ways to get your bag pulled aside, because liquids are one of the first things security is paying attention to. And yet a lot of travelers still pack them in the most unhelpful way possible. Instead of keeping them together and easy to find, they end up scattered through the bag. A small bottle in one pocket, toothpaste in another, lip gloss tucked somewhere else, hand cream thrown in last minute, and maybe a drink or half-finished water bottle still sitting in the side sleeve. And that is where the trouble starts. Because even if none of those items seem like a big deal on their own, once they are spread around in random spots, they become much harder to deal with quickly. Security does not just see one simple liquid bag. They see multiple liquid items tucked throughout the carry-on, and now your bag is much more likely to get stopped so they can work out exactly what is where. What makes this mistake so common is that people pack liquids the way they use them. They put lip balm where they can grab it, hand cream in another spot, toiletries in a pouch, maybe a bottle of sanitizer in an outer pocket, and then forget that airport security is not looking at the bag the same way they are. The scanner is not thinking, "Oh, that makes sense. She keeps her bits and pieces wherever they fit." It is just seeing liquids dotted all through the bag in a way that can slow things down and raise questions. It gets even worse when people forget about the obvious one: drinks. Water bottles, juice, coffee, even just a half-finished bottle shoved into the side of the bag can instantly create a problem at the checkpoint. People get so focused on the little toiletries that they forget the large liquid they're literally carrying in plain sight. Smart travelers do the opposite. They keep their liquids together, make them easy to remove if needed, and check the bag before security so there are no random liquid surprises hiding in outer pockets or side compartments. Because at airport security, it is not just about what liquids you have. It is about whether your bag makes them easy to understand. And when liquids are hidden all over the place, your carry-on starts looking a lot more complicated than it needs to. Number 3. Burying laptops, tablets, and larger electronics. This is a classic airport security mistake because people pack their carry-on for convenience, not for screening. They slide a laptop under clothes, tuck a tablet between books, wedge a camera under a hoodie, and think as long as it fits, it is fine. But when larger electronics are buried deep in the bag, they become much harder to deal with at the checkpoint, and that is exactly when bags start getting pulled aside. The problem is not just that the item is in there. It is that bigger electronics create a lot of shape and density on the scanner, especially when they are layered under other things. So instead of looking clear and easy to understand, the bag starts looking more crowded, more cluttered, and more complicated than it needs to. Security may need a closer look simply because the way it is packed makes the bag harder to read. This catches people out all the time because they are trying to protect the item or save space. They think hiding the laptop in the middle of the bag keeps it safer, or they just do not want to keep pulling things in and out. But then they reach security, and suddenly they are the person frantically unzipping the carry-on, digging through clothes, moving chargers, and pulling half the bag apart just to get one tablet or laptop out while everyone behind them keeps moving. And that is what makes this mistake so annoying. It slows you down twice. First on the scanner, because the electronics are packed in a messy way, and then again in real life, because now you have to unpack your whole system at the worst possible moment. What felt efficient at home turns into a little airport performance nobody wants to be doing under pressure. Smart travelers pack larger electronics where they are easy to reach and easy to separate if needed. They do not bury them under layers or cram them into the middle of a packed carry-on. Because at airport security, the easier it is to understand what is in your bag, the easier it usually is to get through. When a laptop or tablet is buried deep in the carry-on, it is not just packed badly. It is packed in a way that practically invites extra attention. Number 4. Leaving power banks and loose batteries buried in the bag. This is one of those mistakes that sounds small, but at airport security it can cause a lot more trouble than people expect. Power banks, spare batteries, and loose rechargeable battery packs are exactly the kind of items people toss into a carry-on side pocket, tech pouch, or zipped compartment and then completely forget about. They know not to put them in checked luggage, so they feel like they have done the right thing. But then they bury them so deeply in the carry-on that when security needs a closer look, the whole bag becomes a hassle. And that is where things start going wrong. These items may be allowed in carry-on, but that does not mean they should be packed carelessly. When batteries are loose, mixed in with chargers, cables, gadgets, and other electronics, the bag can start looking cluttered and confusing on the scanner. Instead of one simple, easy-to-understand setup, it becomes a bundle of dense little tech items layered together in a way that is harder to read quickly. What makes this such a common mistake is that travelers often treat power banks like a last-minute add-on. They throw one in because they know they might need it later, maybe add an extra camera battery or two, maybe leave old batteries in a pouch from the last trip, and before long, they have created a carry-on section full of random tech pieces they have not really thought through. Then, when the bag gets stopped, they are stuck opening compartments and trying to remember where they shoved everything. And that is the frustrating part. People think the rule is simply, keep batteries out of checked luggage, and that is the end of it. But at airport security, the way you pack these things still matters. If your carry-on turns into a jumble of loose batteries and small electronics, it can draw the kind of attention that slows you down and gets your bag pulled aside. Smart travelers keep power banks and spare batteries together, easy to identify and easy to reach. They do not bury them in the middle of a tightly packed carry-on or scatter them through random pockets. Because at airport security, allowed items can still become a problem when they are packed in the most confusing way possible. So yes, power banks and loose batteries belong in carry-on, but that does not mean they should disappear into the depths of your bag like a little hidden tech treasure hunt. Number 5. Stuffing your bag with too many loose cables and gadgets. This is one of those mistakes that seems harmless because none of the individual items feel like a big deal. A charging cable here, earbuds there, maybe a smartwatch charger, a camera cord, a travel adapter, a mouse, a little gadget you forgot was even in there, and suddenly your carry-on has turned into a tangled pile of random tech. To you, it just looks like normal travel stuff. To the scanner, it can look messy, dense, and far more confusing than it needs to. And that is where the trouble starts. When lots of small electronic items are packed loosely together, overlapping and crossing over each other, the inside of the bag can become harder to read clearly. Security is not seeing a tidy little collection of helpful accessories. They are seeing a cluttered bundle of wires, plugs, blocks, shapes, and dense objects all pressed into one area. And once a bag starts looking like that, it is much more likely to get a second look. What makes this mistake so common is that people pack tech in bits and pieces. They add one cord now, one adapter later, toss in an old charger just in case, keep a backup pair of earbuds, maybe throw in a small gadget they might use on the plane, and before they know it, they have created a bag full of loose extras they never properly organized. Then, when security stops the bag, it becomes that awkward moment where they are digging through tangled wires trying to explain what everything is. And the problem is not just the scanner. Loose tech also makes your own life harder. You cannot find what you need quickly, things get tangled, items shift around, and the bag starts feeling chaotic. So even if security does not stop it every time, it is still one of those habits that makes airport travel more stressful than it has to be. Smart travelers do not let all their little gadgets float around the carry-on like a junk drawer. They keep cables, chargers, and smaller electronics grouped neatly so the bag looks cleaner, makes more sense, and is easier to search if anyone needs to check it. Because at airport security, it is often not one dramatic item that causes the problem. It is the messy buildup of lots of little ones. When your carry-on starts looking like a travel tech explosion, it is much more likely to get the kind of attention you do not want. Number 6. Forgetting sharp or questionable little items in side compartments. This is one of the sneakiest airport security mistakes because people are not usually packing these items on purpose. They are forgetting them. A tiny pair of scissors from an old toiletry kit, a mini screwdriver, tweezers that were fine last time, a pocket tool, a nail file, a small blade tucked into something, or one of those random little bits people shove into a side pocket and never think about again. Then, months later, the bag goes through security, and suddenly that forgotten item becomes a problem. And that is what makes this so frustrating. It is rarely the big obvious things. Most travelers are not trying to bring something clearly wrong through the checkpoint. It is usually the tiny, overlooked items hiding in a side compartment, buried in a pencil case, mixed into a tech pouch, or sitting in that little zip section nobody has checked since the last trip. The traveler walks up thinking the bag is fine, and security sees something they want to inspect more closely. What makes this even worse is that side compartments feel harmless. People treat them like the place for leftovers, all the random bits that do not seem important enough to think about. But that is exactly why they can become a trap. The main section of the bag might be packed perfectly, while the side pocket is quietly holding the one thing that gets the whole carry-on pulled aside. And once that happens, it is never just about the item itself. Now the bag has to be opened, things have to be checked, the traveler is standing there trying to remember what might be inside, and everyone around them is moving on while they are stuck dealing with something they forgot even existed. That is a very annoying way to find out your bag was not as ready as you thought. Smart travelers know that before a trip, the quick check matters just as much as the main packing. They go through the side pockets, the little zip sections, the hidden compartments, and the places random items love to collect. Because at airport security, forgotten does not mean invisible. If there is one tiny, sharp, or questionable item hiding in your carry-on, that little side pocket can end up causing a much bigger delay than you ever expected. Number 7. Packing food that looks confusing on the scanner. A lot of travelers do not realize this, but food can absolutely be the reason a bag gets pulled aside at airport security. Not because bringing food is always wrong, but because some foods look dense, messy, or unusual when they go through the scanner. And when security cannot quickly work out what they are looking at, your carry-on can end up getting a closer inspection over something as simple as a snack. This catches people out because food feels harmless. It is just lunch, a few snacks for the flight, maybe something packed from home, maybe a gift, maybe a spread, a dip, a block of something wrapped up tightly, or a bunch of items all crammed together in containers. To the traveler, it is just food. To the scanner, it can be a thick, dense mass or a strange cluster of shapes that does not read clearly at first glance. And that is where the frustration starts. Because most people are not expecting a sandwich, a stack of snacks, or a tightly packed food container to become the reason they get stopped. They are thinking about liquids, electronics, and metal items. Meanwhile, the thing that ends up getting attention is the food they packed without a second thought. It also becomes a problem when food is packed in a cluttered way. A lunch container wedged next to cables, snacks stuffed around electronics, or several wrapped items all pressed together can make the whole area of the bag look harder to understand. So it is not always one dramatic item causing the issue. Sometimes, it is just the way food adds extra density and confusion to a bag that is already busy. Smart travelers keep food simple, easy to identify, and easy to remove if needed. They do not bury it deep in the carry-on or pack it in a way that turns part of the bag into a mystery bundle. Because at airport security, even perfectly innocent items can slow you down if they make the scanner work harder than it should. So yes, food might feel like the least suspicious thing in your bag, but packed the wrong way, it can still be the exact reason your carry-on gets pulled aside. Number 8. Keeping metal-heavy items packed together. This is another mistake that can make a carry-on look much more suspicious than it really is. A lot of travelers throw metal items into the same part of the bag without thinking about it. Keys, chargers, adapters, hair tools, cutlery, metal drink bottles, compact mirrors, tools, camera parts, even chunky jewelry all end up clustered together in one dense little section. And once that goes through the scanner, that area of the bag can start looking a lot more complicated than the traveler expected. The problem is not always the item itself. It is the way multiple metal-heavy objects packed close together can create a dense, crowded image that is harder to read quickly. Security is not seeing your logic of keeping similar things together. They are seeing a heavy cluster of overlapping shapes and materials, and that can be enough to make them want a closer look. What catches people out is that every item might be individually fine. That is why this mistake feels so unfair when it happens. You are not carrying something dramatic. You just happen to pack a lot of solid metal-heavy things in one area, and now your bag is the one getting extra attention. It is one of those airport security moments where the issue is less about one bad item and more about a bag that suddenly looks far busier and denser than it needs to. It also tends to happen when people are trying to stay organized. They put all the chargers together, all the adapters together, all the little accessories in one pouch, maybe toss in their keys or a compact item at the last minute, and before they know it, they have built one chunky little section that looks much heavier on the scanner than they realized. Smart travelers spread things out a bit more and avoid creating one dense metal pile in the carry-on. They still stay organized, but they do not turn one corner of the bag into a heavy cluster of solid objects all pressed together. Because at airport security, even allowed items can become a problem when they are packed in a way that makes the bag harder to understand. When too many metal-heavy things are packed together, your carry-on can go from looking normal to looking like it needs explaining. Number 9. Using a messy toiletry bag that turns into a cluttered scan. A messy toiletry bag can cause far more trouble at airport security than people expect, because it is one of the easiest ways to make your carry-on look cluttered, dense, and harder to understand on the scanner. A lot of travelers just throw everything into one pouch and call it done. Toiletries, makeup, creams, sprays, razors, little bottles, travel minis, wipes, random beauty bits, maybe some medication, maybe something left over from the last trip. It all ends up packed together in one bulky little bundle that looks a lot less simple once it goes through security. And that is where the problem starts. It is not just about liquids on their own. It is the fact that a messy toiletry bag often becomes this crowded mix of different shapes, materials, and small items all packed tightly together. So instead of looking clean and easy to process, it can look like one busy section full of layered objects that are harder to read quickly. And once that happens, your bag is much more likely to get a second look. What makes this mistake so common is that people treat toiletries like the least important part of packing. They leave them until the end, shove them into whatever pouch is available, and assume security will sort it out. But airport security is not interested in your personal packing system. It just sees a thick little bag full of overlapping items, some liquid, some solid, some obvious, some not, all pressed together in a way that can slow things down. It also becomes a pain in real life, because when the bag gets pulled aside, now you are unzipping a pouch full of small personal items in the middle of the checkpoint, trying to remember what is actually in there, while hoping nothing spills, leaks, or falls out. That is not a fun little moment for anybody. Smart travelers keep their toiletry bags simple, tidy, and easy to understand. They do not overload it, they do not leave random old items inside, and they do not pack it like a mystery pouch that has been collecting things for 6 months. Because at airport security, a toiletry bag is not just a toiletry bag. It is one of the quickest ways to make part of your carry-on look far more complicated than it needs to. When your toiletry bag turns into a cluttered little chaos zone, your carry-on often ends up paying for it. Number 10. Throwing last-minute pocket items into the bag before the belt. This is one of those security mistakes people make in a rush without even thinking about it. They get close to the checkpoint, realize their pockets are full, and suddenly start tossing things into the carry-on at the last second. Phone, keys, coins, earbuds, charger, receipts, lip balm, watch, random little bits from their jacket, all shoved into whatever space is easiest right before the bag goes through the scanner. And that is where the problem begins. Because what started as a quick little tidy-up turns into a messy pile of last-minute items dropped into the worst possible place at the worst possible time. Instead of a carry-on that was packed with some kind of logic, now you have a bag full of random objects sitting in odd places, layered over the top of other things, and making the inside look far more cluttered than it did 5 seconds earlier. What makes this mistake so common is that it feels helpful in the moment. People think they are speeding things up by clearing their pockets quickly and moving on. But what they are really doing is making the bag less clear, less organized, and more likely to draw attention if those rushed little additions create a dense or confusing section on the scanner. A few harmless items thrown in carelessly can suddenly make the whole carry-on look messier than it should. It also creates stress later, because once those pocket items go in without any real place, people forget where they put them. So now they are through security and trying to remember where the earbuds went, where the phone charger got shoved, or whether the watch is in the tray, the bag, or still in the jacket they just grabbed in a panic. It is a tiny moment of chaos that can ripple out for much longer than people expect. Smart travelers do the opposite. They sort their pockets before they reach the belt, know where those little items are going, and do not turn the final few seconds before screening into a rushed dumping session. Because at airport security, random last-minute packing is one of the fastest ways to make a perfectly normal carry-on look far more suspicious and messy than it really is. And when your bag starts looking like a collection of things you panicked and threw together on the spot, that is often exactly how security ends up treating it. Number 11. Treating airport security like it is only about what is allowed instead of what looks suspicious. This is probably the biggest mistake behind all the others, and it is the reason so many travelers get caught off guard. They pack their carry-on thinking, none of this is banned, so I should be fine. And technically, they might be right. The bag may not contain anything clearly prohibited, but airport security is not just looking for whether an item is allowed. It is also looking at whether the bag is easy to understand, quick to clear, and free from anything that makes the scan look messy, dense, or uncertain. And that is the part a lot of people miss. They think the whole goal is simply to avoid packing the obviously wrong thing. So they feel confused, even annoyed, when their bag gets pulled aside anyway. But from security's point of view, a carry-on full of overlapping electronics, scattered liquids, dense food, loose batteries, tangled cables, metal clusters, and random last-minute items does not look like a well-packed, easy-to-clear bag. It looks like something that may need a closer look. Not because the traveler is doing something sinister, but because the bag is making the job harder than it needs to be. That is why this mistake is such a strong one to end on, because it explains the whole bigger picture. Airport security is not reading your intentions. It is reading shapes, density, layers, and patterns on a screen. It does not know you were trying to save space. It does not know that charger is harmless, that food is just a snack, that the battery is for your camera, or that the random bottle in the side pocket is only hand cream. All it sees is a carry-on that either makes sense quickly or does not. And once people understand that, everything changes. They stop packing with the mindset of, well, I think this should be okay. They start packing with the mindset of, will this bag be easy to scan, easy to explain, and easy to check if needed? That is what smart travelers do differently. They do not just focus on the rules. They focus on clarity. They pack in a way that helps security move them through, not in a way that creates doubt and confusion at the checkpoint. Because that is the real truth behind airport security in 2026. A bag does not always get pulled aside because it contains the worst item. Sometimes it gets pulled aside because it is packed in the worst way. So if you want to avoid that awkward stop, the unzip, the search, and the delay while everyone else keeps moving, do not just ask yourself whether your carry-on is allowed. Ask whether it actually makes sense. That one shift can make the difference between sailing through security and standing there, watching someone pull your whole bag apart.